Inspiration sparks and raises our vibrations, encouraging all of us to live our best lives. And it is my pleasure to welcome our speaker for this evening, the Reverend Dr. Norma Turner. Norma has a long history in service and spiritual ministry and education, having taught adults over 35 years and served in pastoral ministry for many years as well. A gifted speaker with a friendly personality and a sense of humor, Norma tries to bring the light and love to all that she meets. A warm Harmony Harbor welcome to Norma.
The reading that I selected today is from a book called Perfect Love, Imperfect Relationships by John Wellwood. He is a teacher of Buddhism as well as a psychotherapist. And I thought that what he had to say really fit in with what I wanted to talk about today. The name of his book, as I said, is Perfect Love, Imperfect Relationships. But the chapter is called From Self-Hatred to Self-Love. Now, self-hatred may seem like a strong word to some. Quote, I have a little doubt, you may say, but I don't hate myself. Yet, if you doubt, judge, or criticize yourself, you are, in effect, indicating some dislike or aversion toward yourself as you are. Or if you have a hard time spending time alone, undistracted by work, phone calls, television, computers, other forms of busyness that pull your attention away from yourself, this also suggests that you may not like being with yourself all that much. Unfortunately, the difficulty you have in loving and accepting yourself affects you even more profoundly than anyone else's lack of love. Whether you have a mild or extreme case of self-hatred, it affects how you feel inside and how you experience your life every hour of every single day. It influences the thoughts you have, the choices you make, the actions you take, the lovers you select, and the relationships you create. In our culture, self-hatred is an epidemic, infecting almost everyone to some degree, even those who manage to conceal it under a veneer of success. Let me grab the book. Thus, an inner trial is going on. Not yet, long page. It's not hard to see where the sense of bad self originated, not measuring up to other people's expectations. Maybe you were a shy, quiet child, but your parents wanted their child to be more outgoing. Maybe your teachers expected verbal excellence, but you were more interested in art, music, and dance. Or maybe your full-bodied exuberance scared off the boys who were looking for someone who didn't threaten them. Nonetheless, the bad self is only a thought in the mind, nothing more. It develops through taking it personally when others don't see or appreciate us. What's wrong with me that no one really sees or appreciates who I am? This pattern became established when we were young. Why are my parents so angry or neglectful toward me? There must be something wrong with me. That's why. That is the only way a child can understand neglect or abuse. As a result, we wind up disliking who we are. If only I were different, then I would be loved and everything would be okay. In this way, shame, the feeling that the self we are is no good, takes up residence in the body and mind. Shame is undoubtedly the most painful of all feelings. That's because it denies the vital truth that our basic nature is intrinsically beautiful and good. This notion of basic goodness is not some New Age Pollyanna creed. Mystics and sages, East and West, from Plato to Lao Tzu and the Buddha, have directly experienced the essence of human nature as a natural purity of heart, from which all positive qualities flow: love, caring, courage, humor, wisdom, devotion, and strength. As an inherent quality of our nature, this good-heartedness is more fundamental than any notion we have about being good or bad based on our behavior or acceptance by others. An unshakable sense of our intrinsic value can only develop through coming to experience and know the essential purity and nobility at our core. By causing us to doubt our basic goodness and thus negating the truth of who we are, shame is paralyzing. It causes our nervous system to freeze up and shut down. We try our best to ward it off. So, like the bad other, the bad self-image also falls unto unconsciousness, affecting us in automatic ways over which we have no control. One way the bad self-image comes to haunt us is in the stream of negative self-talk, which I call inner critic. The critic is the voice that tells us that nothing we do is ever good enough. It dwells just below the threshold of consciousness, waiting for the slightest justification to come out and go on the attack. A simple way to observe the critic in action is by looking at yourself in the mirror. How do you react to that face staring back at you? If you see signs of aging, how do you regard yourself? Do you feel kindness and unconditional acceptance toward the face in the mirror? Or do you judge yourself harshly for not measuring up to some standards? If you could peer into the thoughts in most people's minds, you would find most of them revolving around a single preoccupation. Am I okay or not? This is what fuels the fixation, quote, she loves me, he loves me not. If she loves me, then maybe I'm a good self after all. Someone's successful, attractive, likable, and strong, and I can feel good about myself. But if she loves me not, then I am thrown into the hell of seeing myself as the bad self. Someone inadequate, unattractive, unsuccessful, unlovable, or weak. And then I hate and reject myself. Thus, an inner trial is going on in the background of the mind as we continually marshal evidence for one side or the other. Quote, people responded well to me today. so I feel good about myself. We don't, to the extent, or rather, excuse me, people didn't respond well to me today. So maybe I'm not okay after all. Why do we allow the critic to live within us with all its painful consequences? To the extent that we don't know we're intrinsically lovable, we don't believe love will ever just come to us on its own. We believe instead that we have to do something to make ourselves acceptable. So to push ourselves to try harder to be good, to whip ourselves into shape, we hire an in-house critic to keep tabs on how we're doing. If we can prove that we are worthy, then maybe we will be loved. Unfortunately, this inner trial, quote, am I good enough? No, I could still do a lot better, is endless and fruitless. Trying to be good can never result in a secure sense of inner value because this very effort presupposes that we are not good enough, and that only reinforces our self-hatred. This sense of unworthiness also makes it hard to let love in, even when it is available. Not loving ourselves makes it hard to let others really love us. This frustrates those who are there for us, causing them to withdraw or leave. And then we use that as further evidence that there's something wrong with us. In this way, the bad self story becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Just as it was frustrating having to be a good boy or a good girl to win our parents' acceptance, because then we never felt loved just as we were, so it is with trying to win the critic's approval by proving we are worthy. The self-acceptance that can heal self-hatred and shame will never arrive through winning a favorable verdict in the inner trial. It can arise only out of recognizing and appreciating the being we actually are, in our unconditional goodness and beauty, where we know ourselves as something much more vast and real than any notion we have about a good self or a bad self. I selected this topic because I felt that, at least in my own life, this is a real tricky issue, this idea of self-acceptance. The lesson here is that we are to love ourselves as we are. We understand that we are not without blemish, stain, or imperfection. We're only human. We are individuals who should be able to accept ourselves as who we are. No one of us is perfect, but too many of us probably still hold that bar way over our heads. Where did we learn that lesson? Was it from our parents or caregivers who corrected every little thing to help us grow to be more civil, more social, or more like them? First, I would like to emphasize that every mother and father do the best they can when raising their children. When I was teaching high schoolers, I reminded them of that a great deal. Don't blame your parents. Often, parents will tend to treat their children the same way they were treated, while many will deliberately attempt to change some of the practices and behaviors experienced during their youth. Because of the increased number of people earning associate's and bachelor's degrees and more, parents are often able to bring to their families the insights and learning obtained in post-secondary courses. In my own family, my father did not complete high school, while my mother was quite proud of her 1 year of college. She even had her transcript for that 1 year to add substance to her bragging. I certainly praised her as a model college student, celebrating with her that 1 year that was not usually enjoyed by poorer families at that time. Now, how's that for a good attitude? Despite the good intentions of our parents, I wonder how many of us were compared to our siblings, whether in terms of school, behaviors, or attitudes, personality. How many of us were told that we needed to do better in school, just like an older or younger sibling did? Quote, she's able to get all A's. What's your problem? You know, it's tough to have an academic for a sibling whose idea of a splendid evening is studying history. Really? Or how many of us were told to help out more at home and to check our attitude? This could happen if we had, quote, a saint for a sibling who did everything they were asked to do with a smug little smile on their face. Instead, we hear, quote, why can't you be more like your sister and keep your room clean? My complaining about our overworked teen lives never had a chance with a saintly sibling standing nearby. Somehow, we were all supposed to emulate the best behaviors of the entire clan. My cousin would never smile when pictures were being taken. I asked her, now that she's in her 60s, why didn't she smile when she was little or ever after that? She said, quote, I was mad because they were telling me what to do. Who would have guessed? I have a sister who is at least 4 inches taller than I. And when we were teenagers, she could wear almost anything to look like a fashion model. When hemlines shot up in the 70s, she would wear my clothes, while her clothes would hug my ankles if I dared to wear them. Now, is that fair? Yet here we are, dealing with the fact that in our youth, or maybe even now, we never felt we measured up to everyone else. It's no wonder that we continue to compare ourselves with others in terms of appearance, behavior, or attitude. Admit it, it is very difficult to meet someone for the first time and not begin to size up that person. For me, the question is, how much taller is that person? Well, is that person heavier than me? Does that person know her outfit doesn't match? In summary, we are asking that horrible question, is she better than I am or worse? Why is that question so horrible? Because it signifies a failure to accept that person as she or he is. The sad part is that when we meet someone, we hope to be accepted as we are. That is, we want other people to accept us. Now, how does this affect the fact that we want to focus on spiritual development? Spiritually, we acknowledge that every person is the human that he or she is, because that is essential to the learning process we engage in while on this earth. My body, my mind, my sensitivities, my sense of humor, intelligence, and personality, everything is part of my learning process. I am who I am because I need to be who I am at this time. However, the goal for all of us is to move through the present to develop in the future. All that I am is enough to grow and develop as a spiritual person. But the reality is true for everyone else. As spiritual beings, we need to apply to everyone we meet that same appraisal. We are all who we are because we need to be who we are in order to grow to become the person we are meant to be. That's a good one, isn't it? That's pretty. I like that sentence. Every part of our being and beings that surround us is a necessary part of the environment in which we live. So that person in our office who drives us nearly crazy is not put there to bug us, but to help us learn something about accepting people as they are. Or perhaps there is another lesson to be learned. I once heard, if you think you know the lesson you're supposed to be learning from some situation, you haven't begun to figure out the lesson. The individual we meet who needs to learn personal hygiene or to speak to people without offending them is not there to make our lives miserable, but to help us overcome needless expectations and to accept people as they are. These same ideas would apply to situations, environments, and conditions which we encounter every day. But what is our reaction? To complain, to whine, to become angry? Every situation is different, but we are the same person. If we are truly sincere in our goal for spiritual development, then our basic philosophic approach to every person or situation will be the same. That is, a truly spiritual person will maintain an attitude of acceptance and love, regardless of the person or situation. All right, so we're not ready yet to be sainted. As individuals seeking to develop our spiritual selves, when encountering a situation or a person, we may initially fall into the habits of analysis and judgment. However, we soon become aware of who we are and move toward acceptance and love. For most of us, such movement toward acceptance and love is a process. Let me conclude by saying that the more we can, I'm sorry, I just got this thought into my mind. Let me conclude by saying that the more we remind ourselves that we have a responsibility to focus on acceptance and love, while we can't change things in the past, we can certainly grow from our past to make the changes we want to effect and continue to focus on our own spiritual development. So we tried, and typically we fail time and time again, and are corrected time and time again. It's no wonder we keep failing, because we had to learn a new behavior and learn it correctly. Then we had to try to remember this new behavior and when it was appropriate. Unfortunately, as we grow older, even as we are learning that we are developmental creatures who need to be patient and accept ourselves as we are, we continue to disappoint ourselves. The problem is that until we accept ourselves with all our negative and positive aspects, we cannot accept anyone else. To make a point, my education professor in college described how individuals who cannot accept themselves will sometimes see another person as a great person, a mentor, or a model. They put them up on a pedestal. This is someone who is absolutely wonderful. That is, until they see that person, that same person who was up on a pedestal, doing something unseemly, rotten, or very negative. When that happens, the attitude toward that person takes a nosedive. It's almost as if you realize that person is not perfect, is just normal, is human, just like you. Some relationships are like that. An acquaintance goes from being the best friend one could ever find to the poorest example of humanity walking on this earth. After hearing my professor talk about why people tend to trash someone if they appear too normal, I learned a painful lesson during that class, and I knew I had a job to do. I needed to begin to accept myself as I am. When I acknowledged my spirituality, I found the emphasis on physical and spiritual laws truly amazing. And this is how it all falls in sync with reality. So much conflict can be avoided by working on accepting who we are and being less judgmental about other people. I hope by sharing my experiences and what I have been thinking about self-acceptance is something you will find helpful and meaningful also. Thank you for your attention, and God bless you.